a chiropractor. And my parents came to the office and said, well, come have lunch with us. So I broke away from the office and we went to a local Luby's cafeteria to have lunch. And a friend of mine was the manager. And he came over and sat with us, and we pigged out for about 45 minutes, and the place was packed. I mean, it was boss's day, it was the day after payday, so the place was just absolutely packed. And my friend got up, we had basically finished eating, and my friend got up and went to the kitchen to check on a couple of things. And while he was gone, all of a sudden, through a side floor-to-ceiling window, some guy crashed a pickup truck, came flying through the glass, landed maybe 15 feet from me, knocked over a number of people and tables. And of course I did what everybody did. You know, you think it's an accident. I actually began to rise up to go help some of the people that he had knocked over. And then we heard gunshots. My father and I immediately got down on the floor. We put the table up in front of us. And remember now, this was 1991. So these random shootings, with one clear exception, these random shootings were not happening at that point, and it certainly wasn't the first thing that came to my mind. We're thinking it's a robbery. So we're down on the floor, we got the table up in front of us, my mom is down behind us, and we're waiting for the guy to say something like, all right, everybody put your wallets up on the table. Again, I'm thinking it's boss's day. You know, the place is packed. But he never said that. He just kept shooting. And it took a good 45 seconds, which is an eternity, to realize that this guy was simply going to walk around and execute people. That was his only reason for being there. He was simply walking from one person to the next. He'd take aim, he'd pull the trigger. He'd go to the next person, take aim, and pull the trigger. When I figured it out, the guy was maybe 15 feet from me, continuing in my direction, and I thought, I've got him. I've got this guy. Realize now we're on the floor, table up in front of us, purse is on the floor next to me. I reach for my purse, and then I realized that a couple of months earlier, I had made the stupidest decision of my life. My gun was 100 yards away in my car, completely useless to me. Because I was worried, just like some of you might be, I was worried that I might get caught with it. I didn't want to lose my license to practice. I didn't want to get caught breaking the law. I wasn't a lawbreaker. So there I was, completely helpless, and I cannot begin to tell you, even now it makes me so angry, I can't begin to tell you how frustrating it is to sit there and wait for it to be your turn. We were up in a corner, there was no way out where we were. At that point, my dad took my attention. He said, I gotta do something, I gotta do something. He's gonna kill everybody in here. I grabbed him by the shirt collar and I tried to hold him down, but when he saw what he thought was a chance, he broke loose and he went at the gun. But the guy had complete control over the circumstances, total control. All he did was simply turn and fire. He shot my dad in the chest. He went down maybe 7 or 8 feet from me in the aisle. And this may sound dreadful, but I saw the wound. He was still alive, still conscious, but I saw the wound and I basically wrote him off at that point. The good news was it made the bad guy change directions. Instead of continuing directly toward me, he had to go around my dad. And he went off slightly to my left. He shot the person next to me. Then he continued around the room that way. When I saw what I thought was a chance, I remember looking up over the top of the table. I remember thinking, what can I do now? Can I throw my purse at him? You know, what else are you going to do? But then somebody way at the back of the room broke out a window. A man actually threw himself through one of those floor-to-ceiling windows, great big guy. And people started getting out. People in the then smoking section started getting out through that window. So when I saw what I thought was a chance, I stood up, I turned around, and I remember vividly having my back to the guy. And at that point, not knowing, does he see me? Am I going to feel an impact in my back? I reached down and I grabbed my mother by the shirt collar. I said, come on, we got to run, we got to get out of here. and my feet grew wings. I made it out that back window. As I stumbled through the window and through the glass, my manager friend came through a side door and he said, "Thank God you're okay." And I said, "Yeah, but Dad's been hit and it's bad." And I turned to say something to my mother and realized she hadn't followed me out. Now, to make a long story short, no, I'm going to tell you the whole story. We ran across the street to an apartment complex over there. Let me tell you how long the shooting went on. I was able to go upstairs. At that point, there were already a number of people over there. Everybody kind of knew what was going on. I was able to go upstairs into somebody's apartment and make 3 calls. The shooting was still going on. My sister-in-law, who got the message on her recorder, could hear shooting in the background. When I came back down, at that point, the police officers had made a perimeter. This is what they told me later. Several of them were patients of mine. By the way, the police officers were in the building next door. And in an odd twist of gun control fate, they were not only next door, they were in a hotel room there, or in a Sheraton hotel. They were having a conference. And the manager of the hotel didn't want their patrons to feel uncomfortable by seeing plainclothesmen with guns on their hips. So the manager asked them to leave their guns in their locked cars, in their locked trunks, in fact. So precious, precious moments were lost. They later told me that when they got into the restaurant, they didn't know who the bad guy was. At that point, it was pretty much pandemonium. But they did see a woman out in the aisleway on her knees, cradling a man that had been mortally wounded. They said they saw a young man walk up to her, put a gun to her head. They said she looked up at him, put her head down to her husband, and he pulled the trigger. That's how they knew who the bad guy was. My parents had just had their 47th wedding anniversary 2 weeks prior to that, and it didn't occur to me at the time, but Mom wasn't going anywhere without Dad. 23 people were killed that day. The cops told me all they had to do was fire a shot into the ceiling, and this guy immediately ravaged to a back bathroom alcove area. He exchanged a little gunfire with them and then put a bullet in his own hand. 23 people. Up until the recent Virginia Tech massacre, it was the largest shooting, mass shooting in this country. I got to tell you, when it was all said and done, and some of you may think this sounds a little odd, and you may think that I've doctored it over the years, but you can go back and check the newspapers. There's a quote from me in the newspapers. I told them then, I said, you know, I'm not mad at the guy that did it. To me, that's like, we're not talking about a career criminal. We're talking about somebody who went insane. Somebody that went nuts. You don't be mad at a rabid dog. You know, you might take it behind the barn and shoot it, but you don't be mad at it. But I was mad as hell at my legislators because I felt they had legislated me out of the right to protect myself and my family. Now, I've had, some of you may be sitting there thinking, well, Susanna, yeah, but, you know, your gun could have jammed. Well, okay, it was a revolver, and those don't typically jam, but it's possible. Yeah, okay, it's possible. Well, Susanna, you could have missed. Okay, yeah, maybe I could have missed. I've hit much smaller targets at much greater distances. But yeah, I could have missed. But there's one thing I don't think any of you can argue with. It sure as hell would have changed the odds, wouldn't it? It would have changed the odds.